All right, buddies, welcome in Steelers fans to the Knoll Road. The Steelers have a new player, Jabrill Peppers, joining the secondary. How much does he help? Why did the Steelers do this? Jabrill Peppers, Steelers expectations. Here we go.
Then to the corner of the end zone. Oh, for a touchdown!
All right, welcome into the Knoll Road. I'm 25-year sports radio veteran Gavin Dawson, along with my favorite football Neanderthal, Newbear Lesniewski, former all-academic SEC lineman at Kentucky. Good evening, man. How you feeling?
Hydration is everything. I was just drinking some pickle juice, and I got some glutamine going. Man, I could play tomorrow.
Well, you know, I'm excited about Jabrill Peppers playing this week. Huge, especially on the heels of the Deshaun Elliott knee injury. Not going to be out for long, but he is going to be out. Here's Mike Tomlin talking about the Steelers signing Jabrill Peppers earlier today at his press conference.
Jabrill Peppers in the building. We'll be signing Jabril today and get him up to speed about what it is we'd ask him to do. Highly familiar with him, not only from his time as a Cleveland Brown, but scouted him heavily when he came out of Michigan. He's a football player first, positional player second. He's displayed position flexibility over the course of his career at either safety position, at rundown nickel. He's been a capable guy in the special teams space over the course of his career, covering kicks, returning punts. He's just a good, well-rounded football player. And so glad to add and have him in the fold.
Man, I know Steelers fans are excited tonight, Newbear. What'd you think when you saw this come across the feed?
I was screaming. I love Jabrill Peppers, and I've been a fan of his since he decided he would give up his start sacrificing his body and play linebacker and finished 5th in the Heisman Trophy, you know, going back to Michigan. Who linebacker returning punts. I mean, he's a special talent. And what this means, I think this signals a number of different things. I know we're going to unpack it a couple of different ways. And I saw the tweet. It was Monday. It was yesterday, right? When he tweeted, I've had 7 head coaches and 6 DCs. Everyone talking about me not being able to find a fit in any scheme is out of their minds, right? Like, I mean, this is the guy he's played all over the place and he's made plays everywhere. And, you know, compared to Patrick Chung coming out, you know, same type of size, same type of speed, same type of traits, same type of production. And the one thing that everyone has said about him going back to Michigan, coming out, going through the draft process, is that he didn't have any ball production. He had 1 pick and I think 10 PBUs at Michigan. He had 4 sacks. He was playing linebacker as a junior. He was hurt as a freshman. He played 1 year really of DB in college. And then in the pros, and really what is him on his way out of New England is this ridiculousness of scheme fit. And I'm excited to just get into all of it because I love what this signals, and I love what he could potentially mean to this team.
I love the attitude that he's going to bring, the physicality. I think there's a misperception about Jabrill Peppers because he was a Heisman finalist that he was some kind of an NFL bust, and maybe it hasn't been the most glorious journey through his 9 years as a pro, I believe, but he has done a lot of stuff great. I think he just didn't hit that superstar ceiling that people were projecting upon him because maybe he's not the fastest guy. Maybe he's not the best athlete. And the farther he gets away from the line of scrimmage, the farther he gets away from the ball, I think Jabrill Peppers' powers diminish. But, man, he does so much stuff well. You mentioned linebacker. He can play slot. He can play both safety spots. He can rush the passer. His ability to knife through the defense and find the ball carrier is just outstanding. And to have him as sort of a Swiss Army knife to add to a defense full of them, I mean, just tremendous amount of excitement. Great tackler. Thumper. I mean, I think we like the job that Chuck Clark and Juan Thornhill can do, but this is just a completely different element that you're going to be able to bring in from the safety spot.
And it cost him nothing but a couple of bucks.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was surprised the Patriots let him go. I mean, my first thought was why'd they let him go? And I guess they wanted to save some money, and their defensive scheme is changing to more two true free safeties, I guess you would call it. But I mean, this guy can do it all, and I think the Patriots are going to rue the day they let him go.
Yeah, and the thing is, the Steelers aren't going to ask him to do it all. They're going to have a plan. They're going to have packages. They're going to, and what is such an important part of that is this is another guy who can come in and be a pro, put his face in the fan, do everything that's asked of him, and create scheme versatility. Because all the things we talked about, we saw Jalen Ramsey played every DB position for the first time in his career and was a star of the day. And now you can keep moving him around, but he also doesn't have to be the only guy in the slot bringing heat. And now, if something were to happen where you have, like with Elliott, and he's going to be out for a couple weeks, if he's not 100%, you can let him take another week. And as you go through 18 of those and put yourself in a position to be the best and healthiest or healthiest and best version of yourself going into the playoffs. And then when you get there and you play the Josh Allens and the Patrick Mahomes and the Lamar Jacksons, A, you got to go get those dudes. And two, you got to confuse them both pre and post snap.
Yeah, and he can do quite a bit of that. He can help you in that regard. I just wanted to turn on these highlights. This is from the YouTube page, the Highlight Zone, just some of his top plays from last year in New England. And you're going to see him find the ball carrier. You're going to find sticky coverage. Like, I'm surprised there wasn't more excitement about, holy crap, Jabrill Peppers is available, because so many teams need good safety play. I think it's the most overlooked position in the NFL. For the Steelers, it was a godsend. Like, a free player just fell out of the heavens. And for whatever reason, more teams weren't interested. So you didn't have to pay a lot to get him. But I mean, the guy has playmaking ability with the ball in his hands. He's been a return guy. He just does so many things well. And I think we have some Pro Football Focus numbers to look at as well after we let these highlights play that supports that even further. Newbear, I think the point I'd like you to react to is just, why wasn't there more interest in Jabrill Peppers, and why, from your perspective, did New England decide to let him go?
Yeah, I mean, New England's got, I think it's a 60-year safety and a rookie, younger and as young as you can get, right? Brand new. And Vrabel was very gracious, I would say, which isn't always the case. He can be a little bit gruff. Wished Jabril well. It wasn't a scheme fit. Vrabel even came out and just tried to kind of give a veteran guy, every public benefit of the doubt. But fundamentally, with the changes in the scheme and talking about you're talking about playing higher, deeper safe, that's not what he does. He's a downhill guy. You already called him a Swiss Army knife, and that's what he's able to be. And he can drop, and you've seen him in some of these highlights make some plays on the ball, but his bread has been buttered, his money's been made, and it's going to continue to be so, playing downhill, screwing into the box, coming off the nickel slot, and just being super disruptive, physical, tone setter, leader, accountable, and just another one of those guys that the way Tomlin said it is perfect. He's a football player first and a positional player second. And the more of those types of guys that you have in this ever-changing week-to-week, scheme-to-scheme, who's available, and what are we going to try to do to mess with you from an offensive perspective, he's another one of those guys that allows you to dictate terms the other way around.
The thing that stands out to me about some of these highlights is his ability to keep an eye on the ball carrier while he's fighting through trash. It's almost instinctual and supernatural with his ability to find the ball carrier, oftentimes behind the line of scrimmage, coming from far outside of the frame in order to make these plays. So I wonder if this is reactionary at all to what the Jets did, what the Ravens are going to do. Like, this gives you a guy, I think, that can meet every running back in the NFL in the hole and make the play. He's one of the surest and most violent tackles you'll ever see from a man that his size. But I wonder how much was reactionary to, hey, we got to be better personnel-wise for these teams that bring the dual threat quarterback to the party.
I've always thought about him, even though he's built completely different, that there was a little bit of Ken Griffey Jr. to this guy, in as much as he's so smooth and he makes things look so easy, even though he's such a violent player, that it almost doesn't look like he's trying as hard as he could, should, or would, for a guy who ran 4.46 coming out and was a high school sprint champion. Like, everyone talks about what he is or is not, and then you go put on the tape and you go look at the measurables. What doesn't he have? He's not a drop. He's not Ed Reed. Okay, how many guys are Ed Reed? Can he play like a guy that Troy Polamalu, who also wasn't Ed Reed? Can he go make disruptive plays and play horizontal stretch and in the box and ruin the other team's day? Let's not focus on what someone can't do. Let's focus on all the things that he can.
Yeah. And I still do. I mean, if you want to make this defense absolutely complete, it would be an Earl Thomas or an Ed Reed type of guy. I do think, though, Jabrill Peppers has played plenty of slot. He's showed plenty of coverage. I think I would trust him against tight ends. I was surprised you said 4.46 in high school. I think he's lost quite a bit. I think if you lined up Jabrill Peppers right now and ran him, it'd be in the 4.6s. You know, to answer your question, what does he not have?
Just the elite top end speed. And you know what? I think effort, attitude, I think intelligence, spatial awareness. He has so many other intangible things, but all those things add up and are cherry on topped by an absolute willingness and an utter disregard for his own body, his own person. He has no problem going and getting anybody.
No, he doesn't. And this is a huge get, especially how much you're depending on Chuck Clark, who we like. I mean, you talk about the football character. He's going to put his nose in there. But you see the faults. And from my understanding, even though Peppers is not known as a great coverage safety, better than Chuck Clark, I think you're getting an upgrade across the board while you wait for Deshaun Elliott to get back. And I do love the idea of putting Eccles in at corner, sliding Jalen Ramsey to free, and moving Peppers or Elliott in with him. I think, you know, that gives you considerably better options, I think, in the chessboard.
Nickel, dime, quarters, all the star player, you know, Jack, you know, think about Tyrann Mathieu, right? Think about the way that these truly special dudes who really come in all shapes and sizes. Like, think about all the guys we've talked, Ed Reed, Jamal Adams, Earl Thomas. Who do we just put on the board?
Ed Reed,
Reed, Jamal Adams, Earl Thomas. When you go through some Polamalu, like just such different body types. There's all kinds. Tyrann Mathieu was nobody thought he was going to be able to hold up, and all he did was deliver again and again and again, even coming back from catastrophic injury as a little guy, as the honey badger. Honey badger don't care. Jabril Peppers has a lot of that in his game. And I also think when you look at where he is and you talk about Father Time being undefeated, there's a legacy thing here because, you know, you can be a top 5 Heisman guy. You can have your picture on the wall and your jersey retired in the Hall of Fame at Michigan. You can be a highly regarded guy and a productive player in the NFL, but you know, he's certainly not a bust, but he's not going to anyone's Ring of Honor. If he's able to come in here and be the thing that gets you over the top, and truly cements a historic defense, a Super Bowl run, and you start thinking about the legacy play. I mean, those are forever changing types of things. And then the narrative about this dude's a football life, the narrative from this dude's Wikipedia page to Steve Sable AI is completely different if it ends with him being the final piece to a puzzle that allows you to do what you just said, where, you know, Jalen Ramsey probably isn't going to be able to play shutdown, lockdown corner because of his size, because of losing a step into his mid-30s. But can he be an extreme free safety? And all of a sudden, do you start talking about this guy being a lot like a bigger Rod Woodson or a longer Rod Woodson, like Charles Woodson? Like, talk about comparisons and talk about guys that you love for who are in the Ring of Honor. There's now guys on this team, and I think I sent you a couple of the tweets where, you know, Batco and others were talking about how, imagine if 5 years ago we told you the Steelers would have Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Ramsey, Jabril Peppers, like this laundry list of DK Metcalf, laundry list of who's who. How about last year? If you would have told me last year that all these dudes would be coming together, and now they're here, and all the talk that even you and I have had the past couple of pods, if they're not going to go make a big splashy move for a cheetah, they passed on McLaurin. There's other guys on the board. We've talked about left tackle, defensive tackle, nose tackle in particular. Like, this does signal that they're not going to stop adding. They're not going to stop building. It might not be what, you know, Joe Fan or even me or you want with a McLaurin or a cheetah, or to really just cement the all-in 2025 season. But Jabril Peppers is another one of those pieces where you just keep going, damn. Like, how many other things are they going to have to do before you go? This is all in, or as close to
it's tremendous, and it's a smart all in because they're not exhausting resources. You know, like I talk about, you can't build for now and the future at the same time. Up until now, they're still pulling it off. Can't wait to see what happens next. Okay, next branch on this Jabril Peppers topic tree. I'm going to screen share. I'm going to come over here to Jake Cardonic, who's an economics guy and he studied at the University of Chicago statistics. And they got this site, footballanalyticsnerd.com. It's kind of a competitor for Pro Football Focus. And what you're just talking about right there makes me imagine like Jabrill Peppers is going to be around for a while. And these stats show right here that over the last 3 years, he's actually getting better with age. I think that that first season in New England wasn't the best, but I mean, last year he ranked second amongst 104 qualified safety with just nothing but green here across the board. And I'm going to have to dive into this football analytics nerd guys a little bit, but I mean, you go over to Pro Football Focus, you're going to see similar things. And then you turn on the tape, you see nothing but highlights.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's a data point, and it's literally called Football Analytics Nerd. I just, like you said, he's an economics guy, and he's a nerd, and he's putting it all out there and trying to bring another way to look at this stuff for the data folks. And how does Aaron Rodgers get a 54.5 from PFF on a 4-touchdown, awesome performance, and he grades out at 54.5, where their highest rated quarterback was Matthew Stafford. I think they scored 14 points. What did the PFF spit out there? Their all weekly pro team, and Aaron Rodgers is like, we're not going to talk about how good he played on Sunday. Like, it's just the data stuff is interesting because, to your point, if Jabrill Peppers has lost a step, then what is he? And you talk about puzzle piece, and this is not checkers, it's chess, right? They're trying to do both at the same time. How do you do that? You don't give up resources, or you spend the minimum amount. It's going to be, what is it, between 2.5 and 4.32. The number is going to be somewhere in there based on the total guarantee and what was remaining in New England. And I love the totality of this move, again, because it signals that they're not done building yet.
No, they're not. Okay. And then I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Is this too high of praise? This is Filipponi, but he's tweeting that a longtime Patriots voice says Peppers could be a version of 2008 Ryan Clark in this Steelers defense. Filipponi says I'd sign in blood for that. Is that realistic expectations, or is that going a little bit too far, Newbear?
No, because it's the same thing. Ryan Clark was a guy, and forget anything that you do or don't like about him as a pundit, and just go back to heart and soul. I mean, that's what Ryan Clark was as a ball. I mean, he was going to play hurt. He was going to play injured. Ryan Clark was going to leave it all out there, and he was going to take people with him. Let's not forget, Pittsburgh was his third team at age 27. I mean, he was a couple years in New York. He was a couple years in Washington. And then he shows up in Pittsburgh, and he becomes a critical, integral part of championship teams. And he makes a Pro Bowl, which is, something that our new guy, and I keep wanting to say 5, but he can't wear 5, right? Because of Ramsey. No. He can't wear 15 because of Skoranek. Is he going to buy 15 from Skoranek? Is he going to buy 25? Who's he going to buy a jersey from? Or is he going to go back to wearing 21 and just go Deion Sanders mode? Or does he dust off something completely different? But I keep wanting to say 5, and I think that's what our thumbnail is going to be, with a little Photoshop action to have some fun with it. He becomes the fifth piece, where when you talk about the DBs that you're going to trot out there, where is this guy going to line up? And he can go anywhere from some facsimile of where you're going to play cloud into driving down or hole shot coverage, into coming up and running with a tight end, or coming up and tracking a big back, into flat out screwing into the box and putting his body on the line. And then at the same time, he can come off the edge, come off the corner. How many times have I talked about Mike Hilton, and how I've still been pissed that we let him sail down the Ohio and that we didn't put him on a boat and bring him back when his contract came up every time. So now we have a guy like that. Ryan Clark, tone setter. Ryan Clark, heart and soul. And that's exactly the way Jabrill Peppers plays football. It's heart on sleeve. It's emotional, but it's also cerebral, right? He's a guy, you can't just go out there and play at every level of it. Like Jalen Ramsey, as gifted as he is, can't just go out there and do what he did on Sunday without putting in the work off the field, mentally, preparation, film study, tendencies, and all the things that go into that. You just got another one of those dudes who knows that he's getting to the end of the time where he's got an opportunity to make an impact and step in and give it all he's got, one, and see what this collection of guys can do together when they rise as one.
Yeah, and I showed the play that he just made on Devontae Adams jarring the ball loose. I
Yeah.
mean, that is just so reminiscent of what Jalen Ramsey just did for you. You can watch Jabrill Peppers games from the past and see that same sort of attitude that Ramsey showed consistently throughout that game that just brought a little bit of fire. And it's almost like a young man's energy, even though Ramsey's 31 and Peppers is 28 or 29. But watching that Jets game, especially in the first half, I thought the Steelers defense at time looked old and a little bit unathletic. And, maybe you're thinking we're going to bring in 24-year-old Jamal Adams or something to be that guy. But I think Peppers is one of these dudes that just has so much energy that even though he's old, I just think he plays and has the tone and the swagger of a younger player. And, I think Ramsey and Peppers are going to feed well off of each other and support this defensive line that I think left a little bit something to be desired. I felt like they were running at Cam Hayward, and I'm going to feel a lot better with Peppers coming in to help set that edge.
Well, we talked about. I was expecting Cam's all 22 to be a little bit muddy, and there was some ugly stuff. It was not nearly as bad as Benton's, but for what Cam Hayward's standard is, and for what he just held out in the name of, it wasn't up to that. And I think we talked about this a couple pods ago about how the more, if he was going to risk games and potentially miss coming out, well, he wasn't practicing. You can run hills, you can train, you can lift, you can do Pilates, you can do whatever the hell you want. The only way to really get in football shape is to play football, because there's nothing like it. I mean, hockey, like any of that stuff, tennis, like the only way to really do it is to do it. And he's going to only get better as he gets in football shape. Benton is the one that you have more concern about. What Peppers, what Ramsey, what all these moving parts do, what sliding TJ Watt around, what all this change does is force other teams to have to waste time preparing for it. And then if they do something new and they're not ready, you get free runners. And when you get free runners who have the type of bad intentions that this collections of dudes do, like that's how you take dudes out. This is, you go from giving up 299 yards and Herbie and company on the air questioning where your fight is to taking the air out of other teams.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that the Steelers aren't sitting there hoping that their team and their roster is good enough that once they get to the playoffs, they can make some plays. Maybe I heard whispers that they might have even been thinking about doing this last week. But the fact that the Jets game happened and then you go out and do this, it just seems like they have the urgency and the markings of a team that can end up being champions. And they got a real tough schedule. Not only the Jets defense, but you're right back at them again against Seattle. A defense with talent on all three levels. They add Tank Lawrence. They have good linebacker play. They have good corners, and they're coached by Mike McDonald, former Ravens defensive coordinator who knows you well. So, I mean, the point that I'm making is I don't think you're going to be able to trust that your offense is going to, get the 34 points in order to get the win. You're going to have to go out there and play defense and win some games in the teens or low 20s. And Jabrill Peppers is a big step in that direction. Now you just shake off the rust from your front, and we'll be cooking with Crisco real quick.
I'm trying to think of who would be who's the only statue quarterback. I mean, I know they get Goff late, right? But then it's just Flacco, right? I mean, you talk about Burrow, Love, even Danny Dimes. Herbert looked really, really mobile, and he made some plays with his feet. Caleb Williams is going to run around like a chicken with his head cut off. You know what Josh Allen is. You know what Lamar Jackson is. I mean, there's not a whole lot of dudes that you don't have to account for in all phases and not just read option, but being able to rush contain. And if TJ takes a shot and he whiffs, come clean up that mess. But also you're giving that option to some of these guys up front to take those chances, because it's not like last year in that Ravens game where TJ is maybe cheating and trying to go superhero move because he's got to peanut punch a ball out because they have no chance. Now they know they can go get 35 if they have to, but they also know that there's dudes at every level of this defense that can go get the ball back. Like TJ doesn't have to do it all himself. Like Ramsey, if it was just Ramsey and TJ and Ramsey's running around or if it was still Minka 30 yards deep at the snap, right? Like that is all out the window. And what that means from week to week, you're going to see the other team is going to get some plays because Garrett Wilson's getting paid too. And if you leave him one-on-one, he can beat you deep. And that's going to happen. And that's fine as you go through the process, because then you figure out what you do best when you have that showdown with the Mahomeses, the Jacksons, the Allens, the Herberts, and you have something that they haven't seen yet.
The moment they dealt Minkah Fitzpatrick until today, I've had significant concerns for their safeties. To what extent have they turned this into, it's not a strength, is it just not a weakness now? How would you put that?
It's the connected chain. It's the hip bone, leg bone, knee bone, right? It's what in the hell is going on with Joey Porter Jr., who looks like he was maybe playing the best football we were going to see out of him as a rookie, and now either can't stop grabbing dudes or doesn't trust if it's a confidence thing or if there's some little tweaked thing, right, where he just doesn't trust it to be able to really open up and go. Or like the Peyton Wilson, who we talked about, even in the preseason when he got dunked on a little bit, he was right there. He's just got to get his hand up or get his head around. And you're not used to running 20, 30, 40 yards down the field, versus tracking a guy into the flats or coming downhill like we're talking about with Jabrill Peppers and lighting somebody up. He had a really tough day. And so if you say table stakes is that's the worst game we're going to play, guys are going to get in better shape. Guys are going to learn to play with each other, play off of one another. You're going to learn who does what best, and then you're going to get your best football when it's winning time and when you have to have that because it's all on the line.
So what do you want Sir Omar to do next? Is it, I know you still believe in Broderick Jones. I'm going to give you a couple of weeks on this until you come around me to shop in the trade market.
Trey Essex said it best. What is Pat Meyer? What are these guys doing with Broderick Jones where he's not punching? Like he's not using his damn hands. Like if Broderick Jones, he's long and he is strong, he's athletic as it gets. If he would just punch dudes, maybe they need to set it up like a bar fight. Maybe they need to try something completely outside of the box. But if they could figure out how to unblock whatever it is with him on a snap to snap, down to down, task to task, player to player that he's going up against basis, everything's there for this kid to go become your left tackle for the next decade. And when I go back and I say, if they're not going to get wide receiver 2, then I'm okay with the $20 million being out there, because you're going to have to spend 4 here, 4 there, because things are going to change. And there might be a fire sale in Miami. And then you have the ability, people in the comments talking about how Waddle's not available, because I was saying maybe I'd rather have Waddle than Cheetah. But what if they go out and look even somehow worse than they did in week 1? Because it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of sunny days ahead for that team. And they're not going to be the only ones. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, as soon as you saw the up the do-do-do, and it said Christian McCaffrey has it, even if you had him in fantasy or not, that's the 49ers season in a nutshell. And then they have the variance of the schedule because they were so bad that they have one of the easiest schedules this year. So maybe they have a few wins built into that. Maybe they don't derail as quickly. And because you just paid Purdy $53 million per, they're not going to start selling parts because they're always building and they have the coaching staff and they believe that they can figure it out on a week-to-week basis. But there are going to be other teams where things go south and that happens in a hurry. And potentially everyone's available if you're willing to move any of the 12 picks and you're willing to absorb money that you can, because you still have plenty in the piggy bank. If you're sitting there with these options, and the second you have a problem, meaning an injury to Deshaun Elliott, you go solve it with a Jabrill Peppers. It didn't cost you a pick, and it cost you a couple million, and you still got all that money in the bank, and you still got all those picks, then literally anything else is still on the table.
Well, I'm going to stop you there because we're a little short on time, and I think you might have just prompted the audience into wishing for a Broderick Jones injury. So I don't want to dwell on that too much, but I do want to show you this real quick because you asked, why can't the dude punch? He's got all the length. I'm going to bring up Adrian Peterson's poker game fight, right?
Oh, my God.
You can be big, you can be strong, but sometimes you're just not good at punching. Sometimes you're just not good at recognizing when a dude is vulnerable and lighting his ass up, even though you're a Hall of Fame talent against some dad jobber at a poker game. Not pretty by Adrian Peterson there. He got rocked pretty good.
Yeah,
I think he loses this fight if it had gone a few more minutes.
That's a tough day for the future Hall of Famer. And it's an interesting point that you make there because, Adrian Peterson, the one thing people talk about, he was such a ferocious and breakaway. And remember when he went over $2,000 on 1.5 legs. I mean, the dude was
unbelievable.
Not as freaky as it gets coming off the ACL. And at the same time, he really struggled in the passing game. He wasn't in there to protect, as big and strong as he wasn't in there, protecting your quarterback on third down. And you could argue that some of that is because you want to take that wear and tear off him because he's going to have 300 plus carries and 400 touches.
Sure. Looks like they're doing that with Warren.
Right. But what's fascinating about this thing with Broderick Jones, right, is you asked the question last week because you're not willing to give him some time. You're not saying cut the dude, and you're not. What you are saying is you got to go get Trent Williams. You're not saying go get another guy. You're saying you got to make it the same way we're talking about Cheetah. You got to go. So the Patrick Paul in Miami, I said this a couple of times you talk about a second round pick who has like really good PFF grades and traits and all those things. And you start talking about fire sales and people keep saying things like there's no left tackles that are available. And I'm sitting over here going, if the Dolphins fire McDaniel and in order for them to give up Cheetah for a 4, you throw in a 2 and you eat all the money, you're telling me you can't have that conversation and start talking about guys on rosters that maybe you've not heard of yet because they haven't ascended to Pro Bowl, All Pro, but they're grading out highly and they have those same type of traits because of what they did in college, where they came out, and they're still potentially rising guys. So it's not just saying you have to go get, what is Trent Williams, 37? And he's had injuries, some of these other guys that you might look at and say, well, why would you do that? You go trade, picks, mortgage future, spend the rest of your cap for a rental. Well, what if that rental is the guy that keeps Aaron Rodgers clean for 18 weeks plus whatever you get after that? Like the most interesting question about this going forward with Broderick Jones is if it doesn't get better in a hurry, how long can you wait?
Great point, Newbear. Okay, that's a wrap for the Knoll Road, brought to you by Bet Online. Up to $250 in bonus bets if you use the link in the description. Fastest payouts guaranteed, unmatched game integrity. Plus, you get the casino and the poker and the live racing and the esports and all that. We'll be back shortly with a full preview of Steelers Seahawks. Till then, we'll see you on the Knoll Road.